I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, and welcome to our Film International Feature Panel. I'm here with Edward Berger, Director of All Quiet on the Western Front for Germany, Santiago Mitre, Director of Argentina 1985 for Argentina, Stacy Perskie, Producer for Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths for Mexico, Toufik Ayadi and Christophe Barral, producers of Saint Omer for France, and Colm Bairéad, director for The Quiet Girl for Ireland. Welcome everyone. Celebrations for being official Oscar entries for each of your respective countries. It's fun to see everyone together and have this group panel. I'm going to start off by asking each one of you, and I'll start with Edward, actually. What was the film or filmmaker that had a large or maybe the largest influence on you from an early age that made you say, I want to become a filmmaker? After a movie, director, actor, the first major one that comes to your mind.
Apocalypse Now.
Why?
Fittingly.
Why? What was it about that film?
Oh, why? Well, just because it was so I liked that it wasn't a story. That it wasn't, or it is a story, but it wasn't narratively. It was more of a collage, I guess, and it tried to capture more of, the essence of it was what it was trying to say about war, rather than telling a story about it. And so I really enjoyed that. I could immerse myself in that film and let myself fall into it and just drift around it. And I watched it. I didn't really understand it, so I had to watch it again, and didn't understand it again, and I probably still don't understand it. So that's a great thing that you can keep rewatching it.
Santiago, how about you?
I mean, the question is for as a child. You mean when I started to get interested in cinema, or
yeah, what film or filmmaker excited you?
No, I mean, because if I have to say, which is the filmmaker that I love the most in history, of course there's many, but I am a real big fan of Roberto Rossellini. I think his approach in cinema is very unique. The realism, how he works, and the political, mystical, and social aspects of his cinema, beside the great cinematography and acting and everything. It's something that amazed me. But if I have to talk as a child, I suppose it was Steven Spielberg. I mean, I was born in the 80s and grew up in that period where he did all those magnificent films. And then he keeps being one of the best filmmakers in history nowadays. So it's, I still love Spielberg also.
Stacy, what's the first one you remember impacting you?
Well, it's a difficult one. I would have to agree with Steven Spielberg, and for me, E.T. But I would say that something that really influenced me, as kind of like an early teenager, like seeing Pulp Fiction for the first time, and Quentin Tarantino, and kind of the way that was written, and the performances, and how everything kind of was intertwined together. For me, was like a huge inspiration, and wanted me. I already, from a young age, as a child, I always wanted to become a filmmaker, but that was a huge inspiration for sure.
And Christophe, how about you?
Well, I'm just a producer, but it's strange because I'm sure that if Alice was there, she would have answered Frederick Wiseman. I know she was very influenced by Frederick Wiseman, or on French cineast, maybe Claire Denis. But for me, it was more the new Hollywood period. As a teenager, I mean, I was really, in the Scorsese movie, Coppola movie, all that crew, basically.
And Colm, how about you?
I would say my most watched film when I was young was actually a Charlie Chaplin film, Modern Times, because my dad hated us watching TV. My dad hated television, so he kind of just, our exposure to that box in the corner, he tried to control that, and he sort of gave us our film education and started at the beginning with like silent film and, you know, all these VHSs that he would buy. So Modern Times, I just watched that over and over and over. And, you know, it's like, it's a masterpiece, but I remember though, there was just something about like some of like the basic techniques in it that were just so arresting to me as a young person, you know, where he would do these he would have these like shots of like the workers heading into the factory, and then he would like jump cut to these sheep, you know, walking along. And as a young person, just understanding, it's a very blunt kind of a tool, but it gave you a very kind of strong impression of like the power of cinema and what you can do with the juxtaposition of imagery and so forth. But then that, you know, after that, all the filmmakers that you guys have all mentioned were certainly hugely influential. But I guess like when I kind of came of age a little bit more, I would say I really admire the work of Lynn Ramsey. In particular, her short films. I think they're like some of the best short films that have ever been made. I think like Gas Man is like one of my favorite films, full stop, like regardless of length. So, but yeah, they're kind of my heroes.
Toufik, I'll ask you a different question. I'm curious to know, at what age did you decide you were going to go pursue the film business? And what advice would you give yourself now to yourself at 18 or 25 years old?
Je vais la faire en français, je pense, qu'en anglais. J'ai jamais décidé de faire du cinéma. C'est parce que je cherchais du travail à 20 ans et je suis devenu stagiaire régie. Vas-y, Asia.
I didn't ever decide to start working in the cinema. I was looking for work at the age of 20, and I started working as an intern on film sets.
And I discovered like there is kind of movie, personal movie, which exists. And at this time, I want j'ai toujours voulu en fait essayer de faire exister des films comme cela, des films plus personnels, des films d'auteur.
And it is in working on these films that I discovered the existence of more personal kind of films than the ones I was exposed to. And if there was a decision, it was a decision to help these kinds of films exist, more personal auteur films.
Et à quel âge? Je dirais que, en fait, il n'y a pas d'âge pour faire du cinéma. Il faut, si j'avais un conseil à donner, c'est si on a envie de faire du cinéma, essayons de travailler à n'importe quel endroit, n'importe quel poste, parce qu'on découvre tellement de gens et de techniciens et de magie que c'est là où on se sentira plus sûr de ce qu'on veut faire.
And so if I do have a piece of advice, it is precisely that there is no age to start working in the cinema, and that's a desire that somebody has. Working in any sector of any technical sector will be magical in and of itself as a way to decide what needs to be done going forward.
Santiago, can you tell us briefly about what your path to filmmaking was, and you know what you've learned now that you would tell your previous self to watch out for?
I had a teacher when I was 12 years old, a history teacher, that she had the very good idea that to ask us for, instead of doing written monographies or the things to do with into the school, she asked us to do a short film about some specific periods of history. Well, I mean, it was in the 80s, so many people started to have the handycams, like the small VHS compact or whatever. So, or we have a casting that has it or whatever. So we started to, and that was I went. At that point, I think I thought the actors were the one who were doing the films. I knew that even a director existed. for me. So I mean, I was really involved, and I wanted to do the part of that short film. But I was there. I was taking the decisions also. But and then, well, my father explained me that it was that the figure of a director who takes the decision on what you see on the image existed. So for me, it was enlightening. What? That's a director. There's one who's taking the decisions of the films I'm watching. So it was something enlightening. And since that moment, I started to be interested in cinema and watching the more and more. And I get into film school right away after I finish regular school. And watch and advice is, I don't know. I mean, to watch the more films you can, and to try to watch the more theater plays you can, to read the more you can. It's like you always have to be in connection with history and with present.
Colm, I'm going to go to you next, and talk about your path to where you are and things that you could or would have done differently.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's like, I'm not sure I'd change anything. And, I think we're all sat here today with all of these kind of wonderful films precisely because of all of the things that we've been through, all of the decisions we made, and maybe the mistakes we made. But mistakes are important as well, So I don't think I would actually, if I was able to go back 20 years, I don't think I'd say anything different. I'd just say, just keep going. It's, it's all a mystery. You got to just go out there and find your own voice and find your own path. And it's led to here. So if I was to change anything in the past, like Back to the Future style, maybe I wouldn't be on this call. Maybe I wouldn't have made this film. And I just feel really happy that this is the first film that I've made. It feels like the one, there were other ones that almost happened, and I'm glad they didn't, because this feels like the one that's closest to my sensibility and to my own heart as well. So I wouldn't necessarily, maybe as Santiago said, maybe watch more films. There's a few on my list that I'm still getting through, so maybe that's the only thing. But yeah, apart from that, I'd say just keep going.
Yeah, you didn't have a bad start. I think like 7 Irish Academy Awards or something for your first movie, so you're doing okay. Stacy, how about you? What was your sort of introduction to life in film and as a producer and your journey?
As a young child, when I was 6-7 years old, my mother was a photographer, and she worked a little bit in film in different capacities. She also worked kind of like a little bit in art departments when I was growing up. And, I had the opportunity to spend time after school every day in the set of Dune, David Lynch's film, Dune, which was filmed in Mexico City. And I was just like, I fell in love with, like, I was so intrigued by the process and being on set and watching everyone and watching kind of like everything come together, that was kind of like one of the first kind of huge hints of inspiration that I wanted to do that. And then, when I was a teenager after school, I would go to the film studios in Mexico City and try to kind of work as a, quote unquote intern, whatever they could give me to do. And so I started to spend a lot of time as a teenager in sets in the afternoons every day. So, I just fell in love with it. And obviously, as I mentioned before, I loved watching films as well. So, it was the combination of being in love with films and also the filmmaking process.
And Edward, how about your journey into this business that's led you here?
It's a little bit similar to Santiago. Something he said reminded me of how I thought of this. So I always thought, like, yeah, there's actors and they make the movie, and then, we see it and they do something. And I never spent a minute thinking how they're made, because I come from a city where they make cars in Germany. So and that's basically everyone's an engineer or a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, a tennis coach, or baker, something. So I didn't know that filmmaking was a job. And when I was 14, we went to, but I always loved going to the cinema. And when I was 14, we went to the next biggest city, and there was an art school. And in that art school, they had a film class. And I suddenly realized, what? You can study this? That's ridiculous. Why didn't I know about this? And then I went home and I was so enthused. And I said, there's a film, you can study film and you can learn this stuff. And then my brother just looked at me and said, well, you're going to have to drive cabs later. And then I forgot about it. I said, oh, shit. It really, I found it disheartening, And then when I had to make up my mind at 18 or 19 of what I wanted to do, it just came, it had stuck with me. And I said, and my brothers were engineers, and my sister did something else. And so I came and I suddenly thought, I don't want to be an engineer. And then I just I want to do that, what I really loved doing and watching and what enthused me so much when I went to that school. And so I just pursued that.
And what advice would you give your younger self if you had the opportunity?
When in Germany, when you try to apply to film school, they ask you to have studied something before or learned something else or did be carpenter or travel for a couple of years or do internships in movies, whatever, just gain sort of experience doing something. And I never understood that until I sort of made my second movie and I suddenly realized it was too early. I didn't have enough to say it. I didn't know what I was going to tell. You can always make a first movie and it comes out of you. And the second movie, sort of, I realized I'm too empty. There's nothing inside yet. So I think just patience, maybe. I needed that, and just patience and stick with it and just keep doing it. And then, and just because it is mostly about what you have to say. That's mostly what it is about.
And you mentioned that that you came from a family that does different things. So did everyone sort of have that experience? I mean, is everyone sort of doing their own thing here?
Oh yeah.
It
wasn't like we were
the only filmmaker in the family.
I actually am. I'm yeah. Oh, everyone! You're asking all of us. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, just a group question.
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Oh, I was just curious if you're the only filmmaker in the family, or like if this is rare for you.
Yeah, I'm the only one.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining me today. You made 5 incredible films representing each of your countries so beautifully. So I'm happy to be giving this spotlight on the way to Oscar selections, and best of luck to all of you. Thanks once again for joining us on this Gold Derby Film International feature panel, and I appreciate your time.